Mohammed, in President Trump's tweets, really two very important points to talk about. One, of course, that threat to cut off aid unless Palestinians come back to the table. The other saying we took Jerusalem off the table. How are Palestinian officials reacting?
Well, let's just go directly to one of those Palestinian officials. And I have with me here Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, president of the Palestinian National Initiative. Dr. Barghouti, thank you for being with us. President Trump talked about two things in his tweet yesterday. One, he threatened to take away financial aid given to the Palestinians. But also he said that Jerusalem is off the table now, that it's been taken away. What do you make of his statement?
Of course, we are totally angry at his statement about taking Jerusalem off the table. That means he has decided to impose on us an Israeli solution to the issue of Jerusalem. And he's taking off Jerusalem from the table of negotiations. Yet he says Palestinians must come to the table. But his table is empty because the issue of settlements is off the table. The issue of refugees is off the table. And also now he's taking off Jerusalem. So in other words, Mr. Trump has shown, like his government has shown, that he's totally biased to the Israeli side. And thus he cannot be a mediator between us and Israel. You cannot be a mediator and biased to one side.
But the Palestinians at the beginning of his administration were extremely optimistic with President Trump. They thought that he could be the one maybe changing things. What happened exactly? And do you think that President Trump is justified by withholding money from Palestinians if they're not going to talk to the American administration?
We were not optimistic about him. We were patient. And we waited and wanted to see what he will offer. He didn't offer anything. But what we've noticed after 1 year is that he kept silent about Israeli settlement expansion, which was 100% more than it was before he was in government. We also noticed that he did not spell the word two-state solution not once. He didn't say that Palestinians deserve a state of their own. And then he kept saying it's what the two sides agree about. And then came the recognition of Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. Practically, he decided to participate in a war crime, which is acquisition of occupied territories by force. That's the meaning of his declaration of Jerusalem as a capital of Israel. But more than that, now that he's threatening about money, we don't care about that. He can take his money back. I mean, let him use it for the American people. Because actually, the side that will be hurt most by cutting the aid is Israel. Much of that aid goes to security coordination. And by the way, Palestinians are not really dependent on foreign aid. The total amount of foreign aid that comes here from Arab countries, from Europeans, and from the Americans is no more than 16% of the budget of the Palestinian Authority.
Well, here's the criticism coming from the other side, from the Israeli side. They say that since 2014, and many say even before that, when President Obama, former President Obama, was in the office, that the Palestinians did not really come to the negotiation table, despite the efforts made by Prime Minister Netanyahu with the freeze on settlements, and also the efforts by former President Obama.
That's not what Secretary of State Kerry said. Kerry made a speech before he left, and he practically accused Israel of being responsible for the failure of negotiations because of their settlement activities. And you cannot negotiate while the other side is building settlements on your land. It's like having two sides negotiating over a piece of cheese. One side is obstructed, which is us, and the Israeli side is eating the piece of cheese while we talk. At the end of the day, there will be nothing left on the table, and that's exactly what Trump is repeating. I believe Palestinians wanted to have successful negotiations, but Israel wants to keep the land, wants settlements, and they don't want peace.
Very quickly, Dr. Barghouti, where do Palestinians go from now? What options does President Mahmoud Abbas have in his hands, and where can he go from now? And can he really afford not having the Americans on his side, as well as some of the Arab countries?
To be honest with you, regardless of how bad Mr. Trump has done things, it's liberating. It's liberating us from all these terrible commitments that were one-sided regarding Oslo agreement. It's liberating because many Palestinians who had illusions about Oslo process and about the possibility of negotiations are now waking up. It's not surprising to me, but to them maybe it is surprising. I think we need an alternative strategy. We need to change the balance of power. Without that, we will not have successful negotiations.
Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, thank you very much for your time with us here from Ramallah. As you heard, Nurit and Kalev, very pessimistic look at the future of this peace process and the way that President Trump is talking about the relationship between Washington and Ramallah. Back to you.